The trailer for X-Men 97 came out, and people who read Marvel Comics know the very ending of the trailer teased the introduction of the most powerful mutant to ever exist in the history of Marvel Comics. And no, we are not talking about the House of M Scarlet Witch, because this guy is way beyond that. So let's run over all the mutants who appeared in this outside of the main cast. Kicking things off, we have Morph, who appeared in Exiles #1 in 2001. But Rob, you are saying to yourself, this does not make sense. Morph originally appeared in X-Men the Animated Series, and because the series are based on the X-Men comics, surely they adapted his character from the comics. That's not true. Morph debuted in the cartoon show before Morph debuted in the comics. The version of Morph that you see here in X-Men 97 is the actual comic book accurate depiction of Morph, who has no real definitive shape. Instead, Morph has the power of shape-shifting, and it makes Morph a hoss, because not only can Morph take on virtually any form that you can imagine, by way of Morph's shapeshifting, there's invulnerability, a regenerative healing factor, and power granting. In effect, outside of reality warping, Morph can take on any power that anybody else out there has. But continuing on here, we have Leech. Now, Leech is the little green guy that's standing there with the chick with the eye patch, and while Leech did originally appear in X-Men the Animated Series, he's obscure enough that we can cover him here. But Leech originally appeared in Uncanny X-Men issue number 179 in 1983. And this guy is, depending on who you talk to, the most powerful character in Marvel Comics, but only by way of defense, because Leech does not have any offensive powers. He cannot reality warp, he has no telepathy, telekinesis, none of that stuff. Instead, Leech has the ability to nullify and shut off the powers of anybody in his immediate vicinity, and there is no upper limit here. We saw that in the X-Men comics when Leech shut down the powers of a guy named Absalom Mercator, who had the ability to warp reality. But the woman standing there with Leech with the eye patch, that's Callisto, and she originally appeared in Uncanny X-Men issue number 169 in 1983. And Callisto is kind of a blend between Captain America and Wolverine. No, she does not have adamantium, and no, she does not have claws. Instead, she has the enhanced senses that are usually associated with Wolverine, but she's also got enhanced speed, durability, reflexes, that kind of a thing. I just chose Wolverine and Captain America as examples because, you know, they're super well known. But moving on to the Daily Bugle newspaper, and in fact, even the telephone poll, on the telephone poll is Marrow. Now, she originally appeared in Cable number 15 in 1994, and she can grow bones from her body, and she can control the density or strength of those bones, and she can use them as projectiles or even as defensive shields. Transitioning to the newspaper, the girl with the antlers is Lynn Lee, also known as Nature Girl. She originally appeared in Wolverine and the X-Men Volume 2, issue number 1 in 2014. She can basically manipulate nature, just like you would think she could. Animals, plant life, the weather, albeit not necessarily on the same level as Storm. The girl all the way down in the bottom left-hand corner with what looks like a diamond on her head, that's Blink. She debuted in Uncanny X-Men, issue number 317 in 1994, and she's a teleporter with a limited range. Think like just beyond the moon and back. That's about as far as she can go. But then the guy at the very top with his collar popped and what looks like the reddish blonde hair, that's Banshee. He originally appeared in X-Men number 28 in 1966. And in fact, he was also part of the original X-Men the Animated Series cast, but not part of the main cast. But this guy can use his voice for a variety of effects. He can fly, he can give himself shields, he can use hypnotic suggestion, echolocation, but he's also immune to virtually any and all forms of sound that could be used offensively against him. Now, the woman with the black garb, that is Dust, and she originally appeared in New X-Men issue number 133 back in 2002. She can convert herself to sand, and when she's in that form, she's immune to all forms of telepathy and magic. Now, the person that you see sitting there with a little sliver of white hair looking like they came straight out of 1994, that's Maggot. Now, Maggot originally appeared in Uncanny X-Men issue number 345 in 1997, and they probably have the most disgusting power out of any member of the mutant community in Marvel Comics, which is to say, Maggot does not actually consume food or energy himself. Instead, Maggot has these two giant maggot slug things named Eenie and Meenie that come out of him and consume matter. But they can consume any and all matter, which, if my memory serves me, also includes adamantium. And of course, all that energy is fed back into Maggot himself, which grants him enhanced strength, durability, and telepathic resistance. Now, the woman that most people have no idea who she is, and I actually had to dig through the old comics in order to remember, because I thought I knew, but I wanted to be sure that I was right. The woman in green, that's Stacy X. Now, she originally appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 399 back in 2001, and she basically emits pheromones that can influence the biological processes of people. Originally, it had to be skin-to-skin contact, but over the years, it's changed to where she can literally just kind of emit pheromones out there without actually touching people. But if it's a biological process that your body undergoes, she can make you go it. Nothing about that sentence sounded correct. She can make you orgasm, vomit, the whole 9 yards. It's really kind of cool, if I'm being honest with you guys. But continuing on here, of course, we have a classic, and I chose this guy just because, again, people who are new to the idea of the X-Men mythos may not know who this is. We have Bishop, who is arguably one of my top 5 favorite mutants in the entirety of Marvel Comics. Bishop appeared in Uncanny X-Men issue number 282 in 1991. And this guy can absorb any and all forms of energy and then reuse that energy in virtually any way that he can imagine. 9 times out of 10, this guy just fires it back at you. It's what he did in the original X-Men the Animated Series show. He can make himself temporarily invulnerable, he can heal himself, but there is a big caveat. Think of Bishop as a cup. As he absorbs energy, it's like filling the cup up with water. What happens if it overflows? Bishop explodes. He literally blows up. That's basically it. Now after this, we go into the Sentinels, and I wanted to include this because I thought it was cool. These are Stephen Lang's Sentinels, no relation to Scott Lang Ant-Man. Sorry to disappoint all you guys who were hoping for a connection to the MCU. We're probably not going to get it. The reason why this matters is because Bolivar Trask originally developed the Sentinel program, but once he was defeated by the X-Men during the federal government's Project Wide Awake, they took the Sentinel plans away from the Trask family, gave it to Stephen Lang, and he gave us the Sentinels that we're the most familiar with from X-Men the Animated Series and this. Now, these next 2 little tidbits require us to delve into a little bit of guessing here, specifically with what looks like Jean Grey, because if I'm a betting man, that is not Jean Grey. That is Madeline Pryor. Who's Madeline Pryor? In Marvel Comics, when Jean Grey died at the end of the Dark Phoenix saga, we ended up finding out that there was a villain named Mr. Sinister. You guys remember him from the original X-Men the Animated Series TV show. You know how he was like unhealthily obsessed, like creepily obsessed with the idea of like initiating a coupling between Jean Grey and Cyclops in the original X-Men the Animated Series? That all goes back to his comic book appearances. He came to the realization if they ever had a kid, that kid would be godly powerful. But what he did is he cloned Jean Grey. That clone was Madeline Pryor. They had a child. That child went on to become Cable. Now, this could just be the show basically saying, hey guys, so here's where Cable comes from. And that's how we kind of get that explanation. But there are other instances when a coupling was initiated between the actual Jean Grey and Cyclops that led to the birth of other children. For example, in Days of Future Past, Jean Grey and Cyclops had a daughter named Rachel Summers, who actually became a host for the Phoenix Force. This chick was ridiculously OP. But in the Age of Apocalypse storyline, there wasn't really a coupling between these characters. Instead, Sinister just took the DNA of Cyclops and the DNA of Jean, combined them, and then gave us Nate Grey. This just ridiculously Omega level powerful mutant who had levels of power that I think outside of this guy that we're going to talk about here in a second in Scarlet Witch still haven't been matched. But that leads us to this last little tidbit here, the last will and testament of Charles Xavier. There is a story arc in Marvel Comics that has that name, and it took place in Uncanny X-Men in the 2013 run by Brian Michael Bendis. This introduced a guy by the name of Matthew Malloy, a character that we just covered. Matthew Malloy was, and as far as we are aware, still is, the most powerful being to ever exist as far as mutants go in the history of Marvel Comics. In fact, in that comic book itself, there's a point where Beast is looking using Cerebro. He detects this guy's mutant signature, and even after the events of House of M, makes the statement, it's the most powerful mutant signature that's ever been detected, meaning this guy is beyond the Scarlet Witch, even when she was able to alter reality on a universal scale. Funnily enough, we cover that story, and you'll find a link to it right here at the end of the video. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Let me know how excited you are about X-Men 97, and I will catch you all later. Peace.